If your heart was torn between love and loyalty, which would you choose? What would you dare to risk for the truth? The flickering torchlight danced along ancient stone walls, casting long, trembling shadows that stretched like dark fingers across the royal hall. Lady Alara stood near the heavy oak doorway, her emerald eyes wide and shimmering with alarm as voices carried from the dimmed corridor beyond. The tapestry-adorned walls seemed to close in, the warm golden hues of candlelight suddenly feeling suffocating and cold. A low murmur drifted up the stone stairs, urgent, conspiratorial. Alara's breath hitched as she leaned closer, every muscle taut with dread. The voices were hushed, yet laced with unmistakable suspicion. Can we truly trust her loyalty? As a distant cousin, she holds a claim, but better to monitor her closely. The throne's peace hinges on silence and obedience, not bloodlines diluted by inconvenient truths. Alara's fingers tightened around the delicate fabric of her gown, a deep burgundy that clung to her slender frame, jewels at her throat catching glimmers of uncertain light. Her auburn hair, cascading like molten fire down her back, was a vivid contrast against the cold stone. The words struck her like a blade, doubt cast not openly but whispered in shadows, eroding trust like a slow poison. Her heart thundered, the weight of rejection descending like a shroud fashioned by invisible hands. A sharp intake of breath betrayed her presence. The hall fell silent for a heartbeat before a chilling voice broke the stillness. Alara? Her name was spoken not as a welcome but with veiled accusation. She stepped forward, the polished floor cool beneath her slender slippers, meeting the intense gaze of a courtier whose eyes flickered with concealed disdain. I only meant to understand, she said softly, voice laced with fragile courage. The courtier's lips curled into a tight smile. Understanding serves those with power, Lady Alara. For some, loyalty is a facade easily broken. The words hung heavily, a bitter reminder that beneath the kingdom's glittering facade, treacheries brewed unseen. Alara's gaze lowered to the ornate pendant resting against her chest, a simple locket, plain but precious, a symbol of the secret desires and vulnerabilities she guarded fiercely. It was the only thing grounded in a sea of shifting alliances and whispered doubts. Beyond the grand windows, the night sky swelled with stars twinkling like cold sapphires, untouched by the turmoil within. The distant hoot of an owl echoed, a solitary sentinel watching over secrets hidden in the dark. She swallowed back rising despair, the sound echoing faintly in the vast chamber. Despite the crushing isolation, a flicker of something fierce stirred within her chest, a rebellious spark amid cold shadows. Her breath steadied, and she lifted her chin, the flickering torchlight catching the steel quiet in her eyes. The kingdom may question her loyalty, may whisper her downfall in corridors lined with gold and deceit, but she would not fall silently into that night. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the tense stillness, a herald of the unknown future, fraught with danger and desire alike. As the corridor darkened with the coming figure, Alara's gaze sharpened, poised between fear and defiance. And in that fleeting moment, the space between whispered betrayal and the first step toward truth, the ancient castle held its breath. A golden hue bathed her form, a promise of storm and fire to come. The echo of the hushed voices still lingered in Lady Alara's mind as she retreated from the shadow-haunted corridor into the solitude of her chamber. The grand tapestry of the royal court, so rich in color and gold, now seemed a prison woven with threads of suspicion and whispers that struck sharper than any blade. Her footsteps softened against the plush velvet rugs as the flicker of the candlelight cast trembling shadows that mirrored the turmoil within. The chamber's heavy curtains trapped the last vestiges of daylight, casting a muted, amber glow that turned the room both intimate and suffocating. Alara's emerald eyes scanned the familiar confines, once a sanctuary, now a gauntlet of silence where every sound seemed multiplied. Her breath, the tick of the ornate clock upon the mantel, the distant rustle of servants beyond the thick oak door. A deep, unyielding ache settled in the pit of her stomach. The air felt thick with the weight of courtly judgment, unseen eyes watching, measuring, condemning. The whispered questions about her loyalty replayed in biting fragments. Can we trust her? Is her blood true enough? Or does the crown risk allying with weakness? Her delicate hands clenched the hem of her gown, fabric slipping like a fragile shield between her and the cold realities outside. She felt the sting of abandonment before betrayal had been spoken aloud, the cruel isolation that came with being both part of the tapestry and yet so painfully apart from it. Yet beneath the suffocating shame burned a quiet rebellion. Alara's gaze fell to the simple locket resting against her chest, the silver pendant unadorned but heavy with meaning. Inside, the faded portrait of a woman she barely remembered, a reminder of lineage, love, and the vulnerability nestled deep within her soul. The locket gleamed faintly in the candlelight, a solitary beacon in the overwhelming shadows. Alara's breath deepened as she allowed a small flicker of resolve to rise beyond the suffocating veil of doubt. Suddenly, a soft knock at the chamber door pulled her from the heavy silence. She straightened, steadying her voice to the measured tone demanded by court life. "Enter," she called, the briefest steel sharpening her words. The chamber door creaked open to reveal a young chambermaid, eyes lowered but face gentle. She approached, hesitating before offering a delicate envelope, its seal marked with the Queen's sigil, anonymous but unmistakable. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she took the letter, the paper whispering secrets with the weight of promise and peril. The Queen's seal was a veil over truths hidden, a thread unraveling the darkness that surrounded the throne. In that fragile moment, as the flickering candle cast dancing halos across the parchment, Alara's turmoil flickered with a new, dangerous hope, a suggestion that the shadows at court concealed far more than whispered doubts. The chamber's golden hues dimmed further as the night deepened, yet within Alara's heart, a spark had been struck, a quiet flame resisting the cold grip of suspicion and betrayal. Her jaw set with renewed determination. The woman whose loyalty was questioned refused to be undone by whispers alone. And as the distant howling wind wove through arrow slits, the castle breathed with secrets poised on the cusp of revelation. The heavy oak door groaned softly as it swung open to reveal the dim corridor outside Lady Alara's chamber. The flickering torchlight cast a wavering glow across the stone walls, where carved tapestries hung like silent witnesses of ancient truths and whispered lies. Alara's breath caught as the door creaked shut behind her, sealing her within the velvet shadows of a room that now felt isolation personified. She let the door close and latched it with a quiet click, the sound a fragile barrier against the world outside, a world swirling with suspicion, betrayal, and unrelenting courtly intrigue. Her emerald eyes faltered momentarily toward the floor, tracing the intricate patterns woven into the worn rug, before steadying as the sharp scent of ink and parchment drew her gaze toward the base of her chamber door. There, pressed beneath the aged wood, lay a folded letter, its surface sealed with the delicate impression of a rose rendered in sealing wax crimson and mysterious. Her fingers trembled slightly as she knelt, delicately slipping the note free, the paper cool and weighty with secrets. The chamber grew still, save for the faint crackling of the hearth and the soft rustle as Alara unfolded the missive. The Queen's anonymous script danced across the page, the curves and angles whispering warnings and revelations alike. The letter hinted at a conspiracy far larger than Alara had dared imagine, dark pacts woven in shadows, threats lurking beneath the golden veneer of the crown, and truths buried beneath layers of allegiance and deceit. Her heart pounded with a fierce urgency, the heretofore dormant fire of determination kindled anew. The elegant locket resting against her collarbone seemed to burn hot, a talisman anchoring hidden desires and fledgling courage. Outside her window, the evening sky darkened, the first stars piercing the dusky veil like pinpricks of hope. The royal gardens below whispered secrets through the rustling leaves, the shadowy forest beyond beckoning with the promise of danger and discovery. Alara rose, the weight of the letter in her hand transforming the heaviness in her chest into something raw and vital. No longer a passive player in the deadly game of court politics, she felt the stirrings of a new purpose, a fierce conviction to uncover the hidden, to challenge the masked forces threatening the fragile balance of power. The room pulsed with golden and shadowlight and dark intertwined as if reflecting the tumult stirring in her soul. There was solitude, yes, but beneath it lay the first tremors of transformation, the fragile pulse of courage ready to unfurl. Her breath evened, emerald eyes burning with quiet resolve. She sealed the letter beneath her gown, the rose emblem pressed like a brand of destiny against her skin. The moment stretched a hushed, fragile heartbeat in the symphony of the night as Alara's gaze lifted to the distant silhouette of the king's tower, his crown looming, a symbol of power and peril. A slow knock at the door sent a ripple through the stillness, a summons from fate itself. She moved to the door, every step a movement from shadow into light, from silence into a storm that would reshape the kingdom's future. In that breathless pause before the world shifted, the castle itself seemed to hold its breath a witness to the beginning of a journey where love, loyalty, and truth would clash amidst whispers and swords. The flickering flame of her solitary candle cast tall, dancing shadows, as the night deepened, wrapping Alara in a cocoon of mystery and rising power. And as the door slowly creaked open, the chapter of silent dismissal closed, and the saga of defiant reckoning began. The moon hung low and heavy, casting pale silver light over the spires and battlements of the kingdom as a restless wind whispered through the shadowed courtyards. Lady Alara moved quietly through the labyrinthine corridors beneath the castle, her emerald eyes sharp and alert despite the weight of exhaustion pressing upon her. The letter clenched in her hand was folded neatly, the Queen's emblem a seal of delicate urgency. Its presence was both a beacon and a burden, the call to uncover truths buried deep beneath layers of deceit. Her steps echoed briefly in the cavernous passages, a subtle reminder of her isolation amid the ornate splendor. She paused beneath the glow of a flickering torch, the warm amber light softening her features as she pressed the seal gently with her thumb, drawing strength from the secret entrusted to her. Her elegant gown whispered against cold stone steps as she descended towards the quarters of the lower-ranked nobles, those whose names rarely graced the polished tongues of the court but whose eyes often held knowledge hidden from prying aristocratic gaze. She moved with purpose now, no longer the uncertain cousin but a seeker of justice, galvanized by the shadows gathering at the edges of her world. In the dim light of a modest chamber, Alara found her first ally, a young scribe with sharp eyes and cautious demeanor. His voice was hushed, wary but earnest as he revealed murmurs from the shadows, the subtle unrest seeping through whispered rumors and stolen glances. "You tread a dangerous path, lady," he murmured, his fingers brushing over faded parchment. "But many yearn for truth beneath the king's iron grip." She nodded, the tremor of nascent hope laced with the cold edge of fear. Hope that she was not alone, fear of the cost that each step might demand. Beyond the castle walls, the night pressed close, the distant howls of wolves threading through the skeletal branches of the royal foresta, harbinger of the peril that shadowed every secret uncovered. Alara's gaze lifted to the sky, flecks of starlight flickering like distant promises. Her breath caught on an icy gust as she whispered, "I will not let silence reign." The scribe's eyes met hers, a flicker of trust forged in the silent communion of shared danger. As she prepared to depart, a sudden unease prickled at her senses, a shadow shifting in the torchlight, a lingering glance from unseen watchers. The corridors felt alive with whispers of treachery, the king's web of control tighter, more intricate than she'd imagined. She paused at the doorway, the tapestry rustling faintly behind her like a living thing guarding ancient secrets. The path stretched uncertain, riddled with hidden foes and unanswered questions. In that breath held between shadow and light, Alara steeled herself, a noblewoman transformed, stepping into the labyrinth with courage quivering at the edges, destined to unravel the threads of a deadly conspiracy. The torchlight flickered, casting a wavering glow that danced upon her face, highlighting the storm of determination and fear that roiled beneath her calm exterior. The castle exhaled a long, chilling breath, as if sensing the beginning of a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of the realm. And as Alara disappeared into the maze of stone and shadow, the night closed in the alluring yet perilous promise of truth waiting in the darkness. The grand hall of the castle was dimly lit by trembling candlelight, the amber glow casting long shadows that danced along the ornate tapestries embroidered with the history of a kingdom both glorious and fractured. Lady Alara stood at the edge of the chamber, her gaze sharp as she absorbed the whispers swirling around her like a gathering storm. These nobles, cloaked in silks and secrets, spoke cautiously but with veiled hostility. Her once tentative steps now carried the weight of resolve, but beneath her poised exterior, a tumult of fear and doubt churned silently. Alara's hand brushed the silver locket resting against her chest, the simple jewel a fragile anchor amid the sea of deceit. With each passing moment, the court's veiled distrust tightened its grip, promising peril woven with dark promises. Her discreet communications with the lower-ranked nobles had borne tentative fruit, small alliances forged in the shadows where hope dared flicker. She had learned to read the language of glances, silences pregnant with meaning, and coded phrases whispered behind closed doors. Yet the cost was clear. Every ally risked suspicion, every secret threatened exposure. Tonight, a messenger slipped a folded parchment into her hand, a note that bore no seal but whispered of betrayal and looming treachery. Alara's emerald eyes scanned its harsh words, and a heavy weight settled in her chest. False leads had been planted, misdirecting her investigation, fracturing trust where it had just begun to kindle. Outside, a sudden gust rushed through the open windows, rustling the heavy curtains and scattering ashes from an unattended brazier, mirroring the fragile disorder in Alara's world. The shadowy forest beyond the castle walls loomed like a silent guardian and a looming threat, its tangled depths hiding dangers as well as secrets. A voice, low and commanding, interrupted her reverie. "The king's cunning knows no bounds, my lady. We stand on a knife's edge." She turned to see her closest confidant, a loyal yet cautious noble whose eyes betrayed his unspoken fears. The trust between them was fragile, strained by the politics that threatened to unravel them all. Alara's gaze hardened. "Then we must be sharper still. Our every move measured, our purpose unyielding." Yet even as she spoke, a flicker of doubt whispered beneath her words. The king's machinations were more intricate than she had imagined, entangling not just her loyalty but the very fate of the realm. Days blurred into nights as Alara walked the treacherous path between revelation and ruin. She faced whispered betrayals, false smiles, and the unbearable weight of isolation. Moments of fragile victory smuggled information, averted schemes were shadowed by the ever-present threat of exposure. One evening, as dusk bled crimson into the sky, Alara found herself standing before the great mirror in her chamber. Her reflection was fractured by the cracks marring the glass, a symbol of her own splintered reality. She touched the broken surface lightly, tracing the lines as if to piece together the fragments of her purpose. Her emerald eyes, now steeled with determination, met their gaze. "I will not be broken." As if in silent answer, the castle itself seemed to hold its breath, the deep shadows retreating briefly from the encroaching night. But just as clarity crystallized, the tension snapped. An urgent summons arrived, bearing a summons from King Valen himself. The command was clear, the tone icy: "Meet me in the council chamber at dawn. Questions of loyalty will be answered." Alara's heart pounded, a mix of dread and defiance swirling like fire within. The king's summons was never benign. It promised confrontation, a test where the stakes were her life, her honor, and the fragile fate of the throne itself. The final flicker of candlelight guttered, casting the chamber into near darkness. Alara's silhouette stood poised on the cusp of peril and resolution, a noblewoman forced to wield her courage against the razor's edge of power. Outside, the night deepened, but within her, a fierce light began to blaze, a spark that would not be easily extinguished. The scene closed on the image of the royal crown suspended against the darkening sky, a symbol of authority and control, shadowed by the unseen forces ready to reshape the realm. And as Alara turned toward the looming dawn, the court prepared for the reckoning that would test loyalties, lives, and love itself. A cold wind slithered through the towering pines that guarded the valley below the castle, stirring their needles like whispered secrets. Within the stone walls of the royal chamber, Lady Alara stood motionless, the queen's anonymous letter still clutched in her hand. The heavy air was thick with tension, shadows creeping across tapestries that bore the storied past of the kingdom, a past she now saw riddled with deception and treachery. Her emerald eyes, sharp yet clouded by weariness, lifted as the imposing doors creaked open. King Valen entered, his presence draining the warmth from the room, the royal crown shimmering ominously atop his head, a symbol of absolute power and ruthless control. "You tread dangerous paths, cousin," he said, voice smooth yet edged with steel. His gaze locked onto hers, every inch the monarch who commanded loyalty through fear and cunning. "There are those who whisper of your disloyalty." Alara met his stare, the locket around her neck resting heavily against her chest. "Loyalty demands truth, sire. It is fragile when shackled by silence." The king's lips curled into a cold smile. "Truth? Or betrayal? You forget, Alara, that power demands sacrifice. Not all in our bloodline are content with shadows." A sudden knock echoed the foreboding drumbeat before a storm. The king's advisor slipped in, lowering his voice, "My liege, there are signs that more than one royal harbors desires for change. Plans that endanger your reign." Valen's eyes narrowed. "And you think the distant cousin poses the greatest threat?" Alara's heart thundered, but she steadied her voice. "I seek only justice, not treason." Her words rang with quiet defiance, though she knew the cost of such a stand. The king's gaze flicked to the window where the shadowed forest loomed, a tangled labyrinth of secrets and hidden dangers mirroring the kingdom's unrest. Turning back, he stepped closer, his voice a hush of warning and command. "Be wary, cousin. The crown's enemies are many, and some wear familiar faces. Your silence will serve you well. Your defiance may cost more than you realize." Alara's fingers clenched the letter, now a burning reminder of the stakesure pursuit of truth pitted against a king who wielded power like a blade. Betrayal lurked not just outside but within, the royal bloodline fractured into competing shadows. As Valen's footsteps retreated, the room felt colder, an echoing void where trust once lived. Alara folded the letter carefully, a resolve crystallizing within her core. The journey ahead promised peril, isolation, and fractured alliances. Yet nestled deep inside was an unyielding flame, a conviction forged through fire. She cast her eyes to the locket, feeling the pulse of hidden desires and truths beneath the delicate chain. The night outside pressed closer, the forest song a haunting lullaby to the secrets woven in her fate. The camera lingered on Alara's face-veiled determination etched against a backdrop of encroaching darkness, a noblewoman poised on the precipice of revolution and ruin. And as the cold wind whispered through the castle's ancient stones, the curtain fell softly over a kingdom trembling under the weight of love, loyalty, and the dangerous quest for truth. Night fell thick over the kingdom, a heavy velvet shroud that suffocated even the faintest glimmers of hope. Lady Alara sat alone in her chamber, the flickering candlelight casting long ominous shadows that quivered against the cold stone walls, mirroring the turbulence churning deep within her. The air was stale, pierced only by the soft sigh of the night wind brushing past the shuttered windows. She clutched the heavy locket that hung against her chest, a talisman and a burden, its plain silver surface cold to her touch but alive with the weight of her hidden desires and fears. Outside the beyond the castle walls, the shadowy forest loomed, dark and foreboding, a silent sentinel filled with secrets as impenetrable as the court's web of deceit. The day's public humiliation was a sharp wound that refused to heal. Whispers of betrayal and doubt had weaponized her name, frayed the trust of her closest allies, and left her isolated in the heart of a court that had once been her home. The vibrant laughter and gentle courtesies of nobles had turned to cruel half-smiles and careful glances, heavy with unspoken accusations. Her emerald eyes, once radiant with hope and determination, now shone with a fragile luminescence, flickering as if on the verge of being extinguished. She was left unmoored, a noblewoman stripped of influence and companionship, untethered from the very fabric of the kingdom she sought to protect. The weight of loneliness pressed deep into her spirit, a gnawing ache born not just from exile but from the loss of belonging. In the oppressive silence of the chamber, the only sound was the slow, rhythmic beating of her heart, echoing like a distant drum of downfall and despair. Images haunted her Minda tapestry, unraveling, each thread pulling away without promise of repair. The locket's chain rubbed cold against her throat, a stark reminder of the duality she lived: elegance masking vulnerability, duty shadowed by fear. Her reflection in the tarnished mirror caught her gaze, a woman weathered, worn, yet still somehow unbroken. A sudden gust through the slightly ajar window scattered a handful of autumn leaves across the stone floor, the sound startlingly loud in the stillness. The rustling echoed the chaos briefed in her heart, everything unraveling, slipping beyond her grasp. Her voice was but a faint whisper, carrying both surrender and defiance. Am I already lost to this game? The candle flickered, then steadied a fragile resistance against the darkness looming. Outside, the cold night curled around the kingdom, chilling the stones and chilling her soul. But inside, a single ember of resolve, barely flickering, awaited the breath that would ignite it anew. The great chamber held its breath as the night deepened, the methodical quiet a counterpoint to the unraveling tapestry of power, love, and loyalty. And in the darkness, Lady Alara sate as much a prisoner of shadow as of her own waning hope, poised on the edge of a descent from which there might be no easy return. The cold stone floor of her chamber was unforgiving beneath Lady Alara's trembling hands as she sank to her knees, the dampness of the night seeping through the castle walls to chill her bones. Outside, the endless forest whispered secrets to the moonless sky, a sinister lullaby weaving through the skeletal branches like tendrils of doubt tightening around her heart. The once vibrant tapestry of her hopes had unraveled, each thread slipping beyond her grasp into the cold abyss of betrayal and loss. Inside the dim room, shadows pooled in the corners, suffocating and thick as the weight pressing down on her chest. The golden hues of candlelight had given way to the ashen gray of despair, where every flicker of brightness felt like a distant memory, exhausted and fading. Silence claimed the space, broken only by the faint scrawl of her breathing and the haunting echo of footsteps, phantoms of a trust that had vanished. Alara's eyes, radiant once with the verdant fire of justice and loyalty, were now ghostly pools reflecting a fractured soul, heavy with the agony of isolation. Her gaze drifted towards the mirror, cracked and dusty, the fractured visage staring back, a woman no longer whole, a reflection of all she feared she had lost. Fingers tracing the delicate locket at her throat, a symbol of vulnerability and buried strength, she felt the chill of abandonment seep deeper into her bones. A single petal, fallen from a long-forgotten rose, lay on the floor beside her, pale and trembling. It was a cruel echo of the bloom she carried before, a silent testimony to something once beautiful, now shattered and fading into dust. The shadows lengthened as the night deepened, the air growing colder, imbued with the scent of damp earth and forgotten promises. Alara's lips parted in a whisper. Am I simply the ghost of loyalty past? No answer came. Only the unyielding press of silence wrapping tighter, a cloak woven of despair and hollowed trust. Every footfall in the distant hall carried the weight of a world turning its back. Every closing door echoed the finality of connections severed. Alara curled further into herself, a fragile fortress of pain and despair, the world outside fading to a blur of grays and shadows. Her heartbeat slowed, becoming an uncertain murmur against the vast void of loss. The candle guttered, casting its last, flickering breath upon the cracked mirror that bore witness to her unraveling. The flame's dying glow mirrored the fragile spark dimming within, a spark caught between surrender and the faintest edge of resilience. And as the darkness claimed the chamber, Lady Alara lay still, an echo in the castle's vast silence, poised on the threshold between despair and the faint promise of a dawn yet to come. The chamber lay in darkness, save for a single ray of moonlight that sliced through the heavy velvet curtains, casting a silver path across the worn wooden floor. Lady Alara sat alone, her figure curled against the cold stone wall, the weight of silence pressing down like the shadowy forest beyond the castle walls, thick, impenetrable, full of secrets that threatened to consume her. Her emerald eyes, usually sharp and focused, were glassy pools reflecting the fractured candlelight and the dread that gnawed at her heart. The locket at her throat, plain yet precious, lay cold against her skin, the last tether to a hope that seemed to waver as the night stretched endlessly before her. Alara's fingers trembled as they rested upon a folded piece of parchment she had found earlier, slipped discreetly beneath her chamber door by a trembling hand unknown. The paper bore the Queen's emblem, a rose pressed into wax, its petals faint and cracked like the fragile truths they concealed. Unfolding the note carefully, her breath caught at the cryptic words inscribed. Not all shadows conceal enemies. Some guard the path to light. The phrase lingered in the room like a whispered promise, fragile and elusive. A distant sound broke the stillness, the soft, measured footsteps of her trusted chambermaid, carrying the scent of jasmine and candle smoke. The woman knelt beside her, eyes full of unspoken understanding, offering a subtle nod that ignited a spark within Alara's crushed heart. No words were spoken. None were needed. The glance shared between them held more weight than any declaration. Behind the heavy wooden door, the murmur of the castle deepened the maze of corridors and hidden chambers that now felt both a prison and a sanctuary. The royal crown hung in the great hall, gleaming faintly in the wavering torchlight, a symbol of power both coveted and cursed. Alara rose slowly, the cold air brushing against her exposed shoulders, awakening a slumbering resolve. The veil of despair that had wrapped tightly around her began to fray. Her gaze drifted once more to the locket and the rose emblem, tokens of love and loyalty entwined with danger and sacrifice. In their intertwined symbolism, she found the slender thread of courage needed to step forward. With cautious certainty, she whispered, "The truth will not be silenced." The dawn was near, the first hints of light softening the horizon. Hope, hesitant but unyielding, stirred where shadows once reigned. The scene closed on Alara's silhouette framed by the rising sun, a noblewoman reborn from the depths of despair, poised to unravel the web of secrets that bound her destiny and that of the kingdom. And within that fragile awakening lay the promise that even in darkness, a single spark could ignite a revolution of truth. The grand hall was thick with anticipation, the flickering candle flames casting golden pools of light that danced across the polished marble floors. Lady Alara stood at the edge of the dais, her gown a flowing tapestry of midnight blue and silver, symbols of her noble blood and her quest for truth. Her emerald eyes, once clouded with doubt, now shimmered with a new resolve, reflecting the quiet dawn breaking beyond the stained glass windows. The tumult of a previous night's revelations still clung like a shroud, whispers of secrets, shadows of betrayals, and the faint scent of the rose emblem that had been her beacon. But beneath the surface of trembling nerves, a spark of courage flickered, faint but fiery. She took a slow, deliberate breath, the weight of her journey shaping her steps as she moved forward, each footfall echoing a silent declaration, no longer a pawn in the king's deadly game, but a woman awakening to her own strength. In her hand, she carried a carefully concealed bundle, evidence of the hidden royal heir, pieces gathered from the depths of shadowed chambers and clandestine whispers. The trust of her allies now strengthened her resolve. Their eyes, once clouded with uncertainty, shimmered with newfound hope. Across the room, courtiers and nobles held their breath. The royal banners fluttered softly, the golden crowns a symbol of power and sovereignty that now trembled on the brink of upheaval. The air was thick with tension, the delicate fragrance of wheat and rose intertwining in a silent promise of change. Alara lifted her chin, her voice a gentle yet unwavering whisper. The truth cannot be buried in darkness. It is time to let the light expose what shadows conceal. Her words, simple yet profound, eased the heavy silence. The courtiers exchanged glances, uncertainty mingled with hope, fear with the faint glimmer of justice. The moment lingered in her face, the faint trace of a smile, resilient and unbroken. On the banners, the golden embroideries catching the dawn's first rays. On the gathered whispers, the faint tremor of a new dawn. Outside, in the kingdom's divine dawn, the forest's shadows receded slightly, the first rays of sunlight piercing through the tangled branches. The light was fragile, tentative, yet it spoke of renewal and acknowledgement that change, however slow, was unfolding. Alara's hand rested on the edge of a scroll, a symbol of her unyielding pursuit of justice in a realm of veiled secrets. Her gaze lifted again, piercing the horizon, the dawn promising a future unshackled from deceit. A breeze stirred the heavy drapes, carrying with it the scent of pomegranate blossoms and fresh hope, a silent herald that her journey from darkness into light was only just beginning. The grand hall shimmered in the subdued light of dawn, a stark contrast to the tumult of yesterday's revelations. Lady Alara stood at the center, her gown a flowing tapestry that caught the sparse rays of morning, weaving gold and silver into her presence. Her gaze was steady, yet beneath it, a tempest of resolve and hope flickered, a truth unlocked in her heart that refused to be silenced. She held in her hand the evidence that proved not only the existence of the hidden royal heir but the legitimacy of her claim to protect the realm from its shadowed past. The court's tension was palpable. Courtiers and nobles gathered with bated breath, sensing the wind of change coursing through their gilded halls. Alara stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. The truth has remained in the shadows for too long. Today, we end the cycle of deception. The rightful heir, hidden in the depths of secrecy, now stands to claim their throne. Or future isn't forged by lies but by justice. Gasps echoed through the hall as she laid out the final piece of her evidence, a sealed royal decree, authentic and undeniable. Her words resonated like a bell tolling the dawn, awakening the conscience of the court and stirring a windswept wave of support among the lower nobles who had watched, waited, and suffered in silence. A faint smile touched her lips, layered with relief and purpose, as courtiers began to rise, their voices joining her in demand for justice. The shadows of distrust receded, replaced by a dawn bursting through stained glass, bathing the chamber in a light of renewal. In that moment, she saw the silhouette of the hidden heir, pale but resolute, stepping forward from the shadows. The child of prophecy, now claiming their place beside her, their eyes alight with the fierce fire of rightful sovereignty. A profound silence enveloped the room as the two faced the court, symbolic of old wounds healing and new beginnings dawning. Alara's heart swelled with unspoken affirmation as she looked at the future carved from truth, courage, and unwavering loyalty. The dawn outside pressed against the stained glass, bleeding hues of amber and violet into the heavens, a celestial mirror to the kingdom's awakening. The scene lingered on the proud resolve in her eyes, the shared strength of the family newly restored, and the silent promise of peace taking root in the disturbed soil of years of betrayal. The kingdom stood at the threshold of rebirth, bathed in the radiant hope of dawn and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to seek the truth. The grand hall shimmered with a luminous glow as dawn's rays slipped through the stained glass windows, casting fractured rainbows over the assembled court. Lady Alara stood at the center, her figure radiant in a gown of deep sapphire woven with threads of gold, clothing that symbolized her noble resolve and newfound clarity. Her emerald eyes, once shadowed by doubt, now shone with a fierce light, reflecting the awakening dawn and the truth she had fought to unveil. In her hands lay the final piece of her quest, an ancient, sealed document that confirmed the royal heir's rightful claim. The court hushed, the air thick with anticipation and the scent of freshly cut roses, mournful yet bursting with unspoken promise. Her voice, clear and unyielding, broke the silence. The truth must be known. It is time for justice to reclaim its rightful place in our kingdom. She laid the decree on the noble table, and all eyes fixed upon her. The weight of her declaration rippled through the chamber like a wave, rallying old allies and awakening new supporters buried beneath layers of treachery. Courtiers and knights alike, previously wavering in their loyalty, now rose in murmured agreement, their expressions a mixture of awe and relief. Behind her, the hidden heir stepped forward, a figure pale but resolute. The room seemed to hold its breath as they faced the assembly, eyes glowing with the fire of rightful sovereignty. Their presence cast the shadows away, illuminating the path toward a renewed dawn, a symbol of justice beyond the darkness of deception. Alara's gaze met that of the heir, a silent bond of trust and hope sealing their fates. The court's heavy drapes swayed softly as the wind of change swept through the chamber, swirling away the lingering doubts and betrayals. The great hall was aflutter now with a sense of awakening, a dawn of healing and new beginnings. Alara's heart fluttered with a mix of serenity and anticipation. The journey from darkness to light had been arduous, but victory was within reach. As the first rays of sunrise spilled into the hall, casting a warm, golden glow that seemed to breathe life into the very stones, she stepped back, a ripple of silent pride swelling within her. Her purpose, once fragile, now stood unshakably, a testament to the resilience of love and loyalty intertwined. In that timeless moment, the kingdom envisioned a future reborn from the ashes of secrets, the dawn breaking over the royal garden, emblem of peace, hope, and unyielding courage, a cinematic symphony of dawn and destiny. Dawn's gentle light seeped softly through the grand windows of the palace's eastern tower, casting a tapestry of golden hues onto the marble floors and intricate tapestries that lined the walls. Lady Alara stood quietly in the midst of the sunlit chamber, her figure silhouetted against the luminous dawn, a serene smile faint on her lips. The tumult of the past weeks, the betrayals, the darkness, the upheaval had begun to settle into a peaceful resonance within her heart. Her emerald eyes, once frantic with suspicion and fear, now shimmered with a tranquil acceptance, reflecting the dawn of new beginnings. The subtle movements of her hand brushed the delicate chain of her locket, a simple silver relic she'd worn through countless storms, now gleaming softly as a symbol of her resilience. The air was filled with the scent of blooming roses from the palace gardens, vivid reds and lush greens, faint yet alive with hope. Outside, the garden swayed gently, the morning breeze whispering through the foliage, as if carrying the first murmurs of peace across the realm. In her mind, she traced the tumultuous journey that led her here, the whispers in shadowed corridors, the clandestine meetings, the betrayals that pierced her like icy blades. But within those dark moments, she found a flickering ember of unwavering strength, kindled anew by the truth she had revealed and the justice she had fought to restore. A soft knock, almost tender, echoed at the chamber door, breaking the silence with a gentle promise. Her hand moved instinctively to her waist, where a simple dagger lay sheathed, silent guardian of her renewed resolve. She stepped toward the door, her gaze steady, her posture calm yet purposeful. She opened it to find her trusted chambermaid, a figure of quiet loyalty and compassion. The maid's gentle smile radiated silent reassurance. Without words, Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the promise they shared that the realm's shadows had been dispelled, and a dawn of reconciliation had begun. With a deep breath, she stepped out into the balcony overlooking the royal gardens. The sunrise bloomed across the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber, pink, and lavender, an eternal symbol of hope, renewal, and the promise that love and loyalty, once fractured, could be forged anew. Alara turned her face toward the sun, her heart unburdened, embracing the quiet majesty of a realm reborn. In that stillness, in that radiant silence, she realized she was no longer a pawn bound by secrets and shadows. She was a beacon, her spirit anchored in the truth, her purpose clear and unwavering. And as the light spilled round her, she stood on the cusp of a future unshackled from darkness, ready to nurture the dawn of peace, a luminous testament to the resilience of love, the power of truth, and the unbreakable spirit that had carried her through the storms. The horizon shimmered in hues of violet and amber as dawn breached the royal gardens, bathing the world in a gentle, transformative light. Lady Alara stood amidst the blooming roses, their delicate petals unfurling like hopes reborn. Her gown, once heavy with the burden of secrets and betrayal, now flowed freely with the breeze symbolic of her embrace of a new dawn. Her emerald eyes shimmered softly, reflecting not just the beauty of the sunrise but the profound peace she had finally claimed. She reached out, her fingers brushing the petals of a rosy, a silent act of remembrance and renewal. The storm of darkness and doubt had passed, sown with hardship but also fertile with the possibility of healing. Every scar, every tear, every trembling whisper of fear, now imbued with a quiet grace that resonated in her breath, in her stance. Her face was calm, yet her spirit was alight, a vessel of forgiveness and understanding. The shadows that once haunted her had dissolved into the dawn, replaced by a luminous clarity. The kingdom would rebuild, and she with it no longer a pawn manipulated by shadows but a keeper of her own destiny. Her gaze lifted to the rising sun, a radiant orb of hope spilling its golden light across the realm. The royal city beyond shimmered, alive with promise and the gentle hum of renewal. The pathway ahead was uncertain, veiled in the mist of tomorrow, but her heart beat steady in unwavering rhythm of peace and resolve. With a silent nod to herself, she turned toward the palace, the ancient stones beneath her feet echoing with the footsteps of rebirth. Her journey of pain had led her here, to a place where love and loyalty could coexist without betrayal, where truth could finally bloom like the roses she cherished. The camera lingered on her figure, serene, strong, and freestanding in the dawn's embrace, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit amid the ruins of secrets and the dawn of a new era. The soft light bathed her in a halo of hope, a symbol of the peace that now settled over her world. The first light of dawn broke softly over the royal gardens, spilling gentle hues of gold and blush across the newly reclaimed realm. Lady Alara stood quietly amidst the bloom of rose siege petal, radiant and unblemished, a testament to the peace she had fought so hard to secure. Her gown, a simple yet elegant fabric of pale jade, fluttered gently in the morning breeze, echoing the serenity that now settled within her. Her emerald eyes shimmered anew, reflecting the horizon and endless promise woven into the fabric of her hope. The shadows that once cloaked her heart had receded into distant memories, replaced by the dawn's tender glow and the quiet strength she now carried, unshaken. In her hands rested a single, crimson roseful and vibrant, alive with the beauty of truth and resilience. Its fragrant bloom symbolized the victory of love and loyalty over treachery and darkness. The scent was intoxicating, a pure reminder that even amid chaos, life pressed forward, blooming defiantly in the cracks of a fallen crown. She turned slowly, the soft footsteps of her allies and the courtiers falling into harmonious silence around her. Their faces bore expressions of reverence and gratitude, witnesses to her unwavering courage and the dawn of a new era. The realm's heart beat steady, rooted in the courage of a woman who had dared to face shadowed secrets and emerge victorious. Alara's gaze lifted to the sky, clear and brilliant, where the sun ascended in a shimmering dance of light and renewal. The royal gardens, once scarred by betrayal, now thrived in the promise of peace, their blossoms reaching upward, embracing the dawn with open petals. A deep breath filled her lungs, the air crisp and invigorating. Silence enveloped her, the quiet victory of a spirit reborn, the stillness of a realm finally at peace. In that suspended moment, she realized her journey had transformed her not just as a leader, but as a guardian of love, loyalty, and truth. The shadows had relinquished their hold, and the light, faint but persistent, shone brighter than ever. As the camera slowly pulled away, capturing the sweeping beauty of the sunrise over the royal garden, her figure remained serene, a symbol of hope and perseverance. The dawn's gentle glow faded into a lasting silence that echoed in the hearts of all who watched, a quiet testament to the power of unwavering conviction and the promise of a future built on truth and peace. Have you ever uncovered a secret that changed everything? Share your thoughts below.